I think we all are familiar with the NRC report back in 2009, Strengthening Forensic Science in the United States, A Pathway Forward. A lot has happened since then, and that's what this panel is going to be discussing. It hopefully will talk about the what's going on at the National Commission on Forensic Science, the OSACs, NIJ, ASCLD Lab, the American Academy, and other organizations. There's a lot going on. I have the privilege of introducing our panelists today, and I'm going to start with Robert Barsley to my left, who's a graduate of the LSU School of Dentistry and a 1987 graduate of the Loyola University School of Law in New Orleans. He was admitted to the bar in Louisiana in 1987. He joined the faculty of the LSU School of Dentistry in 1980 and became a full professor there. He currently serves the School of Dentistry as Director of Oral Health Resources and Community Affairs. He is a fellow of the odontology section of the American Academy of Forensic Sciences. He has also served as a Robert Wood Johnson Foundation Congressional Health Policy Fellow in the office of Senator John Brew. He is currently the president of the Louisiana Dental Association, and he is chair-elect of the Council of Scientific Society Presidents in Washington, D.C. He's held numerous offices, including he's a past president of the American Academy of Forensic Sciences, and he was named by NIST to co-chair the odontology subcommittee of the OSACs under the auspices of the Forensic Sciences Standards Board. The second speaker, the second panelist is John Paul Jones, II, who was Associate Director of OSAC Affairs within the Forensic Science Program at NIST. The Organization of Scientific Area Committees, also known as OSAC, for Forensic Science, is composed of 34 different operating units, populated by more than 550 members and over 200 affiliates. It provides the national infrastructure for identifying, generating, and adopting technically sound forensic science standards and guidelines for the forensic industry. Mr. Jones has more than 17 years of scientific and management experience in the forensic industry, including positions in the private sector, U.S. Department of Justice, and the DoD, Department of Defense. He received his bachelor's degree in biochemistry from Virginia Tech and a master's of business administration from Carnegie Mellon University. Our third speaker, Jerry LaPorte, serves as director in the Office of Investigative and Forensic Sciences at NIJ, where their mission is to improve the quality and practice of forensic science through innovative solutions that support research, development, technology, evaluation, and information exchange for the criminal justice community. His primary duties are to oversee the management of over $400 million in grants and to provide expert analysis and advice on agency-wide programs or issues of national impact relating to forensic science. Mr. LaPorte received his BS and Business Administration degrees from the University of Windsor in Canada, and his Master of Science degree in Forensic Science from the University of Alabama at Birmingham. Over the course of his 23-year career, he has worked in various capacities as a forensic scientist. Prior to joining NIJ, Mr. LaPorte was the Chief Research Forensic Chemist for the United States Secret Service. He has over 20 publications, chapters in 3 textbooks, and has presented over 100 lectures and workshops in 13 different countries. The last speaker is Dr. Weedn, Dr. Victor Weedn, who was just recently made a senior forensic advisor to the Deputy Attorney General on detail from his position as professor and chair of the George Washington University Department of Forensic Sciences. He is a graduate of the Southwestern Medical School and the South Texas College of Law. He underwent anatomical and clinical pathology residency training at Baylor, Baylor College of Medicine, and the University of Texas Health Science Center at Houston, and then anatomic pathology fellowship training at MD Anderson Hospital and Tumor Institute, and forensic pathology fellowship training at the Armed Forces Institute of Pathology. He established the Armed Forces DNA Identification Lab and was involved in pioneering efforts to establish STR and mitochondrial DNA sequencing methods. He directed the effort to create the current inspection and accreditation programs of NAME, National Association of Medical Examiners. Subsequently, he has held several positions, including a medical examiner, a crime lab director, research scientist, and now professor. He is the immediate past president of the American Academy of Forensic Sciences. So we'll start off with Robert Barsley first. Is that okay?
I suppose I probably have the least to say, and thank you for that introduction.
Okay.
But I come today representing the American Academy of Forensic Sciences, as you heard before. We have a long-standing role in forensics, but our primary role that I think purports to this panel today is the fact that we have become, or are in the process of becoming, an SDO, a standards determining organization. And we are putting our resources behind that in conjunction with resources given to us by those to help support this. The AAF, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I'm from the South, I don't speak well. And I'm sitting by a guy from Alabama. I'm from LSU, so. I mean, what more can I tell you? And our tiger has cancer, by the way, so. He went and got ready. He actually had nuclear medicine yesterday to fix his brain tumor. But again, the AAFS has had a long role in this, and I think the fact that our moving this science forward after the NAS panel publication, the path forward, I think we're at a crossroads now. And one of the things I hope we talk about today will be, the role of science, or as a dentist and as an attorney. I practice an art and a science. I practice a science-based method of trying to move justice forward. None of us want to see justice move forward in a poor way. None of us want to see people wrongfully convicted. And I think that we want to make certain that we move forward in a proper method. And I think that bringing these things to light has been quite helpful. But with that, I'll pass to the next person.
John?
Yeah.
All right. How do we make the presentations come up here? Click on it. Thanks, John. All right, hold on. Got it. Dear God. This thing is about this big on the screen here, so I'm trying to find that thumb on the right button. Got it. Slideshow. Clicker. They told me I have to use the clicker.
There it is.
Got it. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. So my name is John Paul Jones, and yes, I work for NIST, the National Institute of Standards, and I'm the Associate Director of OSAC Affairs. And I have a short presentation to give to you today. I do feel like you have been cognitively biased already by Mr. Fabricant saying that we are the federal bureaucracy. Well, we are a federal bureaucracy, so you are correct, even though you are biased now. But yes, so what I'm going to talk about is, and I was trying to figure out what I'm going to talk to you guys about for 15 minutes and how do we try to crush it all in there. So let's do three things. Why does OSAC exist, briefly, how you can use it, and what's coming down the pipeline. So work at NIST, lots of stuff going on at NIST. Mike Koble works there too, so we got a bunch of big brain guys running around doing science. We also have some standards experts, and we're involved in a variety of things. We have the commission that we're involved with, the OSAC that I'm going to talk about. We have a funded research program, and we have a big center of excellence that's also doing some work. So why does OSAC exist? Well, there was a lot of individual standardization efforts going on in the forensic community for quite a while, SWIGs and ASTM, NFPA, and others. And it was decided that looking at how these things all operate in sort of a disparate fashion, let's make these things a little bit more uniform and push some little more scientific rigor into them if possible. So what happened was the government decided to get involved with this, a memorandum of understanding between DOJ and NIST, and gave the responsibility really for pulling together the OSAC to NIST. And the concept being, let's give them some financial support, administrative support. Let's help push technically sound standards. Let's make it a united effort. And when we do that, we're going to have greater influence on the industry as a whole. So one of the things I wanted to say about NIST real quick, though, is we are a non-regulatory agency. So we can help make standards, but we're not enforcing them. That's not our role. We are a convener of the OSAC. We're an administrator of the OSAC. We put money into the OSAC. By the way, DOJ, thank you for the money that Congress routes through them to us. You always got to be nice to Jerry, everybody. Guy rolls in with $400 million, you got to pay attention to that. So we are funded each year to support the OSAC, and our budget has been $3 million a year for that effort. And so with that, we have a team. So this isn't one guy just sitting there doing stuff. We have a team of 6 people that are responsible for administering the OSAC. Mark Stollerow usually speaks to this group. He was not able to attend because his wife got him a birthday present to go to a Red Sox game today. So he made the right decision, even though I know he would love addressing you. So besides the OSAC Affairs group, we have 25 other what we call NISTers, guys like Mike Coble and others, that are on the actual technical subcommittees providing their technical expertise. So this group of 6 is in charge of actually running all the operations of the OSAC and keeping the trains moving. So generally, the OSAC, we are trying to create this infrastructure for the forensic science industry that will promote technically sound consensus-based documentary standards. And the long and short of documentary standards, what they are, they're pieces of paper that say how to define something, how something should be done, or how you can, like what you need to achieve certain certifications and things like that. So it lays out a consensus basis on what a community agrees to. So this can be a challenge to work in because it's a consensus-based item, which means you usually reach an optimal solution and it may not be the ideal solution because not everybody agrees to a particular way forward. So it does create a challenge that we're dealing with. So the OSAC at a glance, real quickly, here's our 34 operating units. We have 210 task groups that are not shown here. So there's lots of people in the OSAC. As we said before, there's about 800 people working in here. And we have about 2,200 applications of people that want to participate. So we're doing pretty good with recruiting. We do need more statisticians, though. So if you happen to be one and you haven't applied, please do so. But I'm not going to walk too much through how actual things get made because I don't think we have a lot of time. The main outputs of the OSAC are the standards and guidelines. So believe it or not, OSAC is not an SDO. We do not publish standards. We help write standards, but we do not publish and own standards. And I'll explain a little bit more about that in a second. Our registry, the Registry of Approved Standards, those are documents that are placed on our registry that would be deemed mandatory if you perform a particular forensic discipline. And the Registry of Approved Guidelines are nice to do's, best practices, things you should do, but are not required. And we do not have enforcement power on these. Okay, big picture view of OSAC. In a minute or less. Let's try this. So right now there's over about 700 standards in the forensic science space. And are all of them good? All of them bad? Who knows? There's a lot of different documents out there. So we have and that's, if you want to look at it, we have a document online, the Catalog of Forensic Science Standards that was gathered by NIST and other folks, has the 700 documents listed. So what's going on right now is the OSAC members are going through these particular documents, this catalog, and trying to pick off things that they believe would be good to move the disciplines forward, the forensic science industry forward. And where there are not documents that exist that would help the disciplines move forward, they are writing standards in the OSAC, draft documents, they're writing them. So what happens is the OSAC would then, with the document they've written, they would introduce it to an SDO, like the American Academy of Forensic Sciences Standards Accreditation Board, or ASTM or NFPA. And those SDOs have a way of generating consensus-based standards. And once it goes through that process and comes out the other end, It will be a standard published by that agency, owned by that agency, and made available in one way or another. OSAC then looks at that document and determines, does it meet all our criteria to be placed on the OSAC Registry of Approved Standards or Guidelines? And what this effectively does is it takes the 700 list of 700 and starts boiling it down to a large number, or not a large, a smaller number of standards that have been deemed to be scientifically valid. They followed a due process in the standards development arena, and they're worthy of consideration for the disciplines that they relate to. So we are really a sort of acknowledgement of a document being properly developed and technically rigorous. So that's the sort of the bottom line on how the OSAC works in these areas. And by the way, we are separate from the commission. We do not report to them. They don't report to us. Completely separate. So we can share ideas with each other, but they're completely separate. Okay, so let's talk about these registries here. For those of you that were alive in the 80s, you'll recognize the poltergeist image here. So the registries that we have, they're here. We have two registries, as I said before, the Registry of Approved Standards, Registry of Approved Guidelines. Right now, there's only one standard on our registry. It's a drug enforcement, or a standard practice for the identification of seized drugs. And there's also a NIST statement related to that standard that's on the registry as well. So let's talk a little bit about that drug standard. So first off, if you do drug cases or you prosecute or defend drug cases and you're not familiar with ASTM 2329, I would recommend you become familiar with it. It describes a minimum criteria of identification of seized drugs. So this was originally put together more than 10 years ago by SWIG Drug, a scientific working group on controlled substances at the time, run by SWIG Drug. And it's been in ASTM for about 10 years. So this document's been around. People have been using it. Now that it's on the OSAC registry, it's just getting more visibility and more publicity, and we believe will become more commonly talked about in the criminal justice system. So it describes the analytical schemes where two analytical techniques at minimum must be employed in order to make a proper drug identification. There's a whole schematic in there on how this should occur. And so the Seized Drugs Committee of the OSAC said, hey, this is a good start for us, and we have a few more document standards that build on this particular standard that we have coming forward. So coming here and I thought, what could I tell you guys that would make this somewhat more interesting? And so let's wag the dog for a moment here. You guys are typically consumers of analytical reports and things like that, and then advocates in the courtroom. There are multiple pathways for OSAC standards to be, OSAC recognized standards to be implemented. But I think you guys control the accelerator or the gas pedal on this. And here's why. When attorneys begin demanding testing using OSAC standards, that makes this a reality. People in the forensic laboratories will pay more attention to them. You will be bringing about better justice for your potential clients. And the prosecutors and defense attorneys can help themselves move the industry forward. If you start asking, the forensic industry, it will respond, and it will become part of their accreditation schemes, and I'll touch on that more shortly. Also, if you are retaining defense experts or laboratories in the future, is your laboratory or your expert operating in the particular discipline using the OSAC standards that are on the registry? If not, will opposing counsel know this? Will they ask the question during trial? So it's something to think about as you move forward. Right now, it's pretty simple. We only have one standard on the registry of drugs. We have a few paint, another drug, and some other standards coming down the pipeline that are still being reviewed, though. So the main other implementation pathways that we have are self-adoptions. So crime laboratories are self-adopting to implement the OSAC recognized standards. One of those, I'll show you an example after this slide. Another way is professional associations issue policy statements, like the American Academy or American Society of Crime Lab Directors could say, if there is a standard, OSAC's recognized standard in a particular discipline, our laboratory should follow it. So there is guidance that can be given by these professional agencies. Accrediting bodies can also help with the with this. If they incorporate these into their supplemental standards when they're doing their ISO 17025 or 20 audits of particular laboratories or police agencies, that can help build implementation of the OSAC recognized standards. Also, funding bodies. We have the carrot and stick approach. Carrot being, here's some money to help implement these particular OSAC standards, or the stick approach, you don't get any money unless you implement the OSAC standards. So there is no regulatory body that is implementing anything. This is how standards work in the United States. The standards are developed in private sector organizations, and they're voluntary consensus standards. But if you want them to be implemented nationwide, it takes an active effort to make that happen. Or someone invent a federal agency that gives them power to do it, and then they force it. That could happen as well. So here's just an example of Kentucky State Police, their drug chemistry lab. They have incorporated into their drug chem standards, their protocols. I'll read 5.9.1.1 here down there. The drug chemistry section monitors the reliability of forensic examinations with quality control schemes, including but not limited to adherence to OSAC standards and guidelines. By putting that in their particular protocols, now when they are audited, and I think they're undergoing a routine audit right now for ISO 17025 accreditation, they will be looked at to determine if they are complying or following the the OSAC standards that are related to that discipline. So that essentially says they self-adopt, and there will be third-party declaration that they are adhering to that because it's in their protocol, and they will be accredited against that. So if you would like some more information, if you have a particular case that you're working on, we have about 12 hours of content online for each of the 30 forensic science areas that we cover of the latest standards activities that are going on in those spaces. We present every year at the American Academy on Monday and Tuesday. So if you want to fly out early to wherever the destination is, you can come hang out with us on Monday and Tuesday. But we archive it and put it online. So if you have a DNA case or you have another case you're working on, you can see what the latest activities are in forensic science by visiting these. And let's see, if you are, NIST has negotiated with a ASTM so that all public defender offices and prosecutor offices will receive free access to the 50 ASTM E30 Committee on Forensic Sciences standards. So if you're a public defender or prosecutor, or you work at one of those agencies and you want to see 2329, the drug standard, you will get free access to it. We've negotiated that for a fee with ASTM. And then we've also made it available for a variety of other criminal justice organizations. What I wanted to point out here is we do have, Chris, we do have some bureaucracy in the OSAC. There are processes that we use in order to approve standards. But the one thing I wanted to note is if you want to participate in our processes, we have a mandatory public comment period on all standards that are being considered for the registry. So, and we advertise that monthly in our newsletter. So if you have something to say about a standard we're putting up on the registry, you can comment, and we are forced to adjudicate those comments and publish the comments and publish the adjudication. So that can be shared. So it's something to think about. Our monthly newsletter, which will come out, it should be June 15th, and they're going to announce public comment on NFPA 921, NFPA 1033, ISO 17025, and ISO 17020. So they'll be up for public comment coming, should be June 15th-ish when we publish that newsletter. And let's see here, I think I've run out of time there. One thing I wanted to just make note of, we're hoping that in the future, as we move forward, that prosecutors and defense attorneys will consider using the OSAC registries, the standards and guidelines in court, and asking, were these particular standards used in the case in front of the court? If they were there any exceptions to the protocols outlined in those standards? Deviations are permitted if you document why you did those. So there has to be a paper trail on why you did what you did and why you may have deviated. So that helps bring transparency to the laboratory analysis. And also judges and juries will routinely hear expert witnesses testify how their analysis met current standards, are scientifically valid, and also describe the limitations of the conclusions that they're presenting to the court. So I will highlight, though, there's a couple challenges that we've been dealing with. It's amazing that when you bring together 800 different people, some statisticians, lawyers, scientists, how the use of the words mean a lot. There's a lot of disagreement over the definition of words. Like, for example, I was on a call yesterday with statisticians and drug chemists, and they were arguing a lot over the terms population, sample, homogeneous. They mean different things to different people. And trying to get through that is a challenge. Another thing that was pointed out earlier is 921 and 1033. Those standards have 3 and 5 year recycle rates. So they don't get updated for until 3 or 5 years. So when an OSAC standard comes up for OSAC registry approval, the practitioners, many of the practitioners are saying, are the challenges that people are pointing out, are they worth waiting 3 more years before this standard gets put on the registry? Sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes the answer is no. But that's a dialogue that goes on within the OSAC, because standards take time. And when something goes up to the registry, if it's voted down and it needs to go have fixes made, which is fine, it just takes time. You're looking at probably a year. So some of the debate that goes on is this problem big enough to not allow it to be put on the registry? We have 150 standards under development that will be introduced to SDOs like AAFS and others. We have 40 research and development needs that are published on our website. So if you know any researchers that need some project ideas, you can tell them to look there. And so with that, I thank you.
Great. Thanks so much. Take as much time as you need.
Okay. Dude, I don't know how you're going to see it.
Yeah. Hopefully I'm clicking on the right one.
Thank you.
All right, there we go. Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully my southern accent isn't too thick, but even though I went to grad school in Alabama, I'm a Canadian. So in fact, I'm from southern Canada, so that's about as south as that's going to get. First of all, like all the other government employees, the opinions or points of views expressed are those of the presenter, which is me, and do not necessarily reflect the official position or policies of the United States Department of Justice. For those of you that don't know the National Institute of Justice, well, first of all, I'm the director of the Office of Investigative and Forensic Sciences, which is within the office, within the National Institute of Justice. But NIJ is the independent research arm of the United States Department of Justice. In 2013, Attorney General Holder issued a memorandum that reasserted NIJ's independence. My director, the NIJ director, is a presidential appointee. We do not have to conform with anything that the department says. We don't have to vet our reports, our research reports through the department. Everything is made at the level of NIJ in the interest of science. So it's important to understand that we are independent. And we're kind of this separate research arm. But we are the lead federal agency for forensic science research and development, as well as the administration of multiple programs. And all of those programs are targeted at improving laboratory efficiency, reducing backlogs, providing technical assistance, all at the end of the day to provide more safety. So a lot of times a lot of people think forensic science as more of a reactive situation, a crime happened, forensic science comes in, but we are there to prevent things from happening in the future. Forensic science is all about safety. It's something that I think that gets overlooked, but it is all about safety of our community and our people and this nation going forward. So the whole mission, like I said, of our office is really to focus on improving the forensic science and strengthening forensic science as much as we can through various avenues, disseminating information, coming up with new solutions, supporting our local, state and local forensic practitioners, whatever that is. In 2015, a report was issued by the National Research Council and the National Academies of Science. They were tasked to assess NIJ's role, and the title of the report was Support for Forensic Science Research, Improving the Scientific Role of the National Institute of Justice. So we asked them to come in and evaluate our infrastructure, what we were doing for the forensic science community, and then to provide some recommendations. So I'll talk about the good things that they said, and the two big things. This is not Jerry talking. This is 12, I think it was 15 esteemed scientists. NIJ has a unique and critical role among the diverse federal agencies working to positively impact the progress of forensic science, because unlike any other federal agency in this country, NIJ has a mission focus on forensic science research and development. There's no other agency actually in the world that mimics what we do here in the United States. We actually have an agency that's focused on forensic science. And the efforts of NIJ have restored authority that is appropriate for a science agency and addressed some previous concern about NIJ's independence, and two, contributed to the building of a research infrastructure necessary to develop and sustain research that advances forensic science methods. That's somebody else saying it, not me. Just some impact highlights I always like to tell people. So we have supported the forensic science community with over $825 million from 2009 to 2014. That's contributed to more than processing of 370,000 DNA cases, which have been funded, resulting in over 157,000 CODIS uploads and 62,000 CODIS hits. More than 42,000 cold cases reviewed, resulting in over 2,000 CODIS uploads. We have a post-conviction DNA testing program that's contributed to more than 54,000 post-conviction case reviews that have resulted in 27 exonerations, more than 1,000 research presentations, publications, and final technical reports. So we have a philosophy at NIJ about our research and development, mainly accurate and reliable forensic science based on research will definitely make a difference in the individual lives, public safety, and really creating a more effective and fair criminal justice system. Also, too, it is critical, it's absolutely critical that research be guided by rigorous peer review. So now our peer review process has changed significantly. This was reviewed by the National Academies of Science. They didn't have any negative things to say about our peer review process per se. But generally speaking, we have done an immense amount of outreach to the academic community, to the statistics community. Most of our peer review that's done for our research and development projects, the minority of the peer reviewers are actually forensic science practitioners. So we pull from all the different areas, but it is critical, and I can tell you personally, I was a practicing forensic scientist. I was a researcher, and there are differences, and there are gaps in those two, if you will, those two areas. So it is critical to have practitioners part of the process. And that research has to be innovative. So we're thinking ahead. We're being critical of ourselves. But we're also addressing practical solutions. And then also partnerships and collaborations are very important. We've got multiple collaborations with other federal agencies. We have a partnership with multiple collaborations with NIST in the National Science Foundation. And then just to kind of let you know that, based on when I came to NIJ in 2009, I can tell you that there has been a paradigm shift in the research and development culture in the forensic sciences. I was one of the people that was guilty of working. I was work cases all year long. I went to the American Academy meeting. I did some research. I did a presentation. And I came back to work a week later, and I didn't have time to publish. I didn't have any of that time at all. I had to get back to casework. There's been a lot of research, a lot of good research that hasn't made it to that necessary stage. But that's changing now. In just some numbers that we've seen, the number of scientific publications resulting from our supported research and development has increased over 300% from 2007 to 2012. And even the presentations has increased over 400%. I'm going to talk a little bit about the impression and pattern evidence disciplines. And when I talk impression and pattern evidence, just so we're all on the same page, generally that's going to be latent prints, firearms and tool marks examinations, shoe print and tire tread evidence, question documents or handwriting, bloodstain pattern analysis. So we don't include bite marks in this discussion because that's part of an odontology discipline, and it's not generally when I'm talking about the disciplines that come from a forensic science laboratory. And don't talk about microscopic hair analysis because that's not impression or pattern evidence, but it sometimes gets clumped in there. So generally speaking, I'm talking about those 5 main disciplines. Sometimes we get this, we hear this misnomer that the impression and pattern evidence disciplines are comparison-based or experience-based disciplines. Actually, if you read through the 2009 NAS report, they will talk about the value of experience. I'm a chemist. I can tell you right now that I have done a lot of pattern comparison based on my experience. Look at mass spectra, look at infrared spectra. We're looking at patterns. Now, of course, those lines and those peaks and all that, they mean something. They have some meaning behind it. But at the end of the day, we are comparing knowns with questions, and we're doing a direct comparison, and that's going to be based on our experience. It's going to be based on science. It's going to be based on knowledge, but all of that comes into play. You heard this discussion this morning. There's a lot of interpretation. So there's interpretation in the science, I was a drug chemist for many years. I worked in toxicology. So there is a lot of interpretation. There's a lot, it's not much different than the impression and pattern evidence disciplines. Probably the main difference that I always tell people is that in the impression and pattern evidence disciplines, I don't have a machine doing my method and my analytical work. So as a chemist, I've got a GCMS or an FTIR. As a biologist, I'm using PCR. I'm using some sort of scientific analytical method, if you will. But in the impression and pattern evidence disciplines, the human is the machine. So it's difficult to calibrate that machine. It's difficult to validate that machine when it comes to a human. But at the end of the day, we all interpret. I really hate to say this, but there is no gold standard. I heard this morning, and it really frustrates me as a scientist. There's no single gold standard. We work evidence that just varies from case to case, and there's interpretation that's involved. And whenever a human is involved, in all forensic science, humans are involved, it's not going to be the perfect machine. I tell lawyers all the time, every case is going to be different. You should be treating every case like it's all bad. You ask your questions, find out everything you can, but every case should be treated the same way, which is start from the ground level up. It's not, there's not going to be perfection in the world of DNA and the world of drug chemistry. There's always going to be something that could go wrong there. I just wanted to provide, we've been keeping track of some bibliometrics, and another thing that does frustrate me occasionally is when I hear there's no research. There's lots of research that's going on, folks. Most people that say there's no research, they're not reading journals every month. They're not looking at all of the research. They're not keeping track of all of the research. Forensic science is made up of multiple disciplines. And I can tell you right now that there's probably very few people in this room that could keep up with everything that's coming out in every single discipline on a monthly basis. I've got just a bibliometric search of terms like quantitative, statistical, those types of things for the impression and pattern evidence. I have over 250 citations from 2009 to 2015. So just, here's some examples I tried to highlight in red, some things that sort of stand out. I'm not gonna comment on the quality of these studies, but I will kind of come back to these are peer-reviewed publications. They're well-respected scientists. They come from academic institutions. NIJ has many highly esteemed academic institutions that provide work for us. Stanford, Yale, John Jay. So, that we have lots of that going on. Most of our research in our general solicitation is done by academic institutions in collaboration with practitioners. Just latent print research, is another one. There's tons of research that's going on in this particular area in terms of error rates, cognitive bias, trying to develop better, more quantitative methods, statistical analysis. Here's two big studies that have come out already on error rates in latent fingerprints, finding that, generally speaking, these are two different studies, that the error rates are very, very low amongst latent print examiners. And then even handwriting research. Lots of research going on in this area, and it's all happening very fast. And unfortunately, it's sometimes very difficult for practitioners to even keep up with all of this. On top of that, I can tell you right now, I've got 200 research and development projects that are in the pipeline. Generally, I have a pretty good idea of what's going to happen 3 years before it comes out. But on average, a research and development project, depending, of course, on the scope of it, could take anywhere from 2 to 4 years. Generally, when that's done, that could take about another year to get to write up a publication, and then another 6 months for peer review. So you're talking about sometimes anywhere up to 3 to 5 years from the time a project starts till something's published in that area. So it's a slow and deliberate, iterative process that takes a lot of time, but there's definitely been a lot of work going on. So kind of, this is a question. I'm not going to opine on any of this, but what are the real challenges when we really dig down into the impression and pattern evidence? Is it the foundational science? Is it the methodology? Is it the training? I can tell you that training varies from agency to agency around the country. Is it interpretation? How do you interpret results? Expressing uncertainty, expressing confidence. And if you get into this area where a forensic scientist is going to go to court and opine on something, and you're sort of looking for that statistical or quantitative assessment or opinion, and it becomes very difficult. A lot of times we are actually expressing our confidence. So if you hear terminology like highly probable or probable or likely or whatever those words are, generally speaking, that is a level of confidence that somebody's expressing. Effectively communicating the strengths and limitations of the method. Effectively communicating your conclusions or your opinions. Are you using the right word? When I use consistent with as a chemist, I know consistent with does not mean the same. If I meant to say the same, I would have said it's the same. I wouldn't have kind of backed off on the word and said consistent with, similar to, matches. We use those words because we're trying to stay away from saying the same. However, I think we've learned that people are interpreting those words in different ways. And if I go to court and testify and I say consistent with or similar to, then somebody else, the 12 jurors or even the lawyer that I'm talking to might think that I'm trying to say it's the same. So I think forensic scientists really need to sort of drill down really hard on this and find better ways to express conclusions and just try and be more accurate. Scientists don't want to, and I can't say I know any scientist that would deliberately want to miscommunicate something to a jury. If you do, then you're probably a sociopath. You're not a forensic scientist, but we do struggle. I mean, I've been in this profession for 23 years, and I still struggle on how to articulate everything that I've put together up in my head based on my knowledge, skill, and experience, and now I got to communicate that to 12 people that maybe don't have a chemistry background, and I got to try and I bring up analogies and I do those things, and sometimes I think we do that in the wrong way. But it's not, so those last sorts of questions are, in my opinion, actually, I think that we probably need to work on all of those. I wouldn't say that, one thing's, I don't think we're totally lacking. I think we've got lots of research that's going on. We need more research, but that's what science is all about, folks. I mean, for the lawyers in the room, just to let you know, science isn't perfect, okay? And it never will be perfect, because once that happens, then it's not science any longer. Then it becomes factual. Okay?
Beautiful. Thanks so much.